Welcome to the Voice of Retail. I'm your host, Michael LeBlanc. This podcast is brought to you in conjunction with Retail Council of Canada. In this episode, Lisa Hutcheson, Managing Director of J.C. Williams Group, joins us to talk about her rich, decades-long background in retail and the retail megatrends brought together in the annual Ebeltoft Group's Global Retail Trends and Innovations Report. For the past decade, one of my favorite reads of the year. We talk about the 2020 report, the 4 key trends that pulled together the retail case studies, and a few of the standout retailers representing each of the 4 big trends. Next, Karl Littler, Senior Vice President of Public Affairs from RCC, returns to the podcast to bring us up to speed on the ratification process and timeline in Canada for the new NAFTA agreement, CUSMA. Karl also provides a masterclass on understanding the new, hard-fought de minimis rules that will help keep the playing field level for online retailers in Canada. But first, let's jump right into my conversation with Lisa from J.C. Williams. Lisa, welcome to the Voice of Retail. How are you doing today?
I'm great. Thanks so much for having me.
Well, my pleasure. Listen, tell me about yourself. Tell me about J.C. Williams, and you've got a long, great history in retail. You and I recently just met, actually, but it's funny.
Surprisingly,
it's one of those people you're like, how have we not met in the past 20 years somehow? Exactly. But anyway, it's great to it's great to meet you and now have you on the podcast. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Excellent. Thanks for having me. Yeah, I'm Lisa Hutcheson. I'm the managing partner at J.C. Williams Group. We are a boutique retail consulting firm based here in Toronto. Personally, going way back, it all started for me on the sales floor where I really developed the love of retail, specifically operations. I started back in the 80s, dating myself here, I guess, with Cotton Ginny. The company was really small. We were, I think, a dozen stores at the time, and I was part of a group that grew that business to over 400 stores very quickly and multiple divisions. We had broken it up and started kids and plus size and intimates, and so that was a really great experience. I went on to Reitman's, again in senior operations roles, overseeing, again, a couple of different brands, and then moved on to Comark, which at the time I think they had about 12 brands, and again in senior operations. And then I was invited, there was a big initiative that was going on across their stores in North America, about 1,000 stores, and I was asked to wear the operations role for the special project. And I really loved the idea of projects. I really thought, I have found my niche. It was the blend of retail operations and projects.
So that's the spark of the consulting part, right?
Totally. You know, in reflection, I look back and I think about when I was in different stores in different districts and regions. I was always asked to, parachute in and solve problem stores and turn businesses around when I was within the corporate, and then this marrying of projects and trying to support and turn businesses around really sparked that consultancy. So I went out on my own and I was helping indie retailers and retailers turn their businesses around, help them with new strategies, and an opportunity with J.C. Williams, came available. It was a firm that I had always admired. And, it's karma. It's time for me to be here. So that was about 18 years ago, and I've been working alongside the firm, had the enormous pleasure and opportunity to be mentored by John Williams. And I guess it's been almost a couple of years. We started a conversation about transitioning the business. He was a visionary and never saw himself actually retiring, but wanted to be able to step back. And so we started conversations. And in late 2018 and early 2019, myself and my business partner, Patrick Watt, who also had an association with the firm, actually officially made it official and started transitioning the business. So, and I took on the role of managing partner, and Patrick, as I said, also had been working with the firm and brings a food service element. He's a food service planning and design expert. And so we really see how important food is. The food is becoming so important in retail space.
It's a real real marriage of
Totally.
It's a really savvy approach because there's such an integration marriage, whether it's grocerants or whether you're just in the bigger, broader live, work, play kind of trends, right?
Really, which is where we have been finding our sweet spot in terms of where the firm is going. J.C. Williams Group is, that boutique retail consultancy firm. We find that our business is really built on the foundation of research. That's one of our key differentiators. We have various different types of research from our National Retail Bulletin that we put out every month that is free for anybody who wants to subscribe, as well as we have a subscription model for retailers and real estate developers, things like that would like to have specialized, tailored monthly subscription-based research. And we also believe that all of our projects are built on that foundation of research. And we are very much, our model is very focused on that live, work, play, shop. And that's where we are today. And it's been a really great ride and really exciting. And we're looking forward to the future.
Just a quick sample. You've been talking about interesting things about libraries and planning. Just touch on that a little bit, because I think it's really... it's a really interesting way to highlight the trend in the work that you're being asked to do.
Yeah. So we have been doing, very traditional retail kind of consulting that you would think of, helping retailers define strategy, working with shopping centers and developers that are looking to, enhance the retail program. But we have also been doing a lot of work with healthcare, university and college campuses, and tourism. And so, we're excited to be working with the Ottawa Public Library right now in terms of their new facility, helping them with a retail and food service strategy, working with hospitals, really using retail to build community and help the healing and help the people flow through the buildings, and retail providing a better environment for healing as well as the staff that are working there. Similarly in the college campuses. So it is really that the work that we've been doing with the campuses, understanding how people use retail and how that plays out in that whole work, live, play, shop in a community.
And so your J.C. Williams, you being J.C. Williams, is part of the Ebeltoft group. I'm saying that correctly, I think.
That is correct.
First of all, tell us a little bit about the Ebeltoft group. But what I'm really keen about talking about is one of my favorite books of the year, and I've been following it for many, many years, is the Global Trends and Innovation book that comes out each and every year. And, it's funny because, I've been in retail for a long time. I think I know a lot of the players. Without fail, I'm like, I never heard of these guys. It's such a fabulous book. So first of all, tell us about the Ebeltoft Group, and then the connection of what that group does, and then let's dive right into the Shears edition.
Yeah, for sure. So J.C. Williams Group is the exclusive Canadian partner of the Ebeltoft Group, which is a global retail consortium of global retail experts representing 18 countries, 25 emerging markets. And so basically, this is a group of like-minded boutique firms. We meet twice a year in sort of a mastermind kind of environment that we meet all over the world. And we have that opportunity to brainstorm, we collaborate, we share experiences, the kinds of projects that we're working on. We tour stores in that marketplace that we're in, and it's really an opportunity for us to get a global perspective. And it's adds so much value to our customers to be able to bring that global perspective. And even when we are doing best practice research or other kinds of research for our clients, we have this network that we can reach out to. And so, it's not just those twice-a-year meetings.
Right.
We are in communication. There's emails happening all the time in terms of from all the different member countries. And so that, the Ebeltoft formed back in 1990. We've been members right from the very beginning. We were original founding members. And then, so then the book has, since the group formed, we have been talking trends and innovation. And back in 2005, I believe it is, that this year is our 15th publication, we said, you know what, we should really take this analysis and put it together into a book, into a publication, into a tangible reference guide or Bible, and maybe some may see it as, and to help understand and focus on the trends and these innovations that are coming forward. And the thing that's really great is, you're seeing it in a context of however this particular trend is evolving, but then you can quickly see how the other sectors embrace the trend, or different categories.
Cross-pollination of the trends.
For sure.
Right?
They're like, oh, how could this apply to me? And I think, maybe one that comes to mind for me is Birchbox, one of the first subscription models. And now you're seeing that subscription model across all different categories. Yeah. And so taking the learning from this original idea and how it morphs and changes and evolves as people are getting perspective and how that they can spark innovation for their business. And so, we just are launching our 2020, our 15th year.
And I see four trends. So take me through the four trends, and then we'll release the kind of, I don't know if that's the winner, but it's kind of one of the marquee retailers, and then talk about the process about how each of the member of the Ebeltofts kind of get involved. So what are the four things that collectively you've observed that we need to know about? Yeah,
so basically what happens is throughout the year, the members all start to compile, the really interesting cases that we see across, globally. And we start to pull together what we've identified as really interesting things that we would like to share with our community. And so we compile these, and this year there were 40 cases that were presented. And so as we curate and read through the different cases, you start to see these emerging trends. And this year we've landed on 4. There has been years there's actually been more than 4. But for the last couple of years, we've really landed on 4. And so this year, the first one is omni-integration. So, we've been thinking omni-channel, but it's really omni-channel, bricks and clicks, reducing friction, and that whole, integration of technology into businesses. The second one is extreme convenience. So we know that consumers today are time-starved more than ever. So it is eliminating pain points. It's seamless retail, on-demand retail. So, really taking convenience to a new level. The third is extreme experience. So, think of these amazing flagship stores that you're seeing, this amplification, brand building, emotional, social sharing. So, we've been talking about experience, but now we are seeing these incredible experiences in retail. Sustainable practices, so sustainability continues to be on the forefront for us. Brands that are about purpose, responsibility, conscious consumption, activism. So those have really been the definition of where we see the trends going this year.
I heard this great phrase at the Restaurant Canada show, the world on your plate, someone said. And I thought, and the world on your glass was kind of too complimentary. And how that Gen Z and people are looking more now at, what they eat, what they consume, and want to understand and are judging brands and retailers by that kind of worldview of sustainability. However that means different things. I talked to a master sommelier who tells me the big trend is actually vegan wines.
Oh, interesting.
And so interesting, right? Like the trends all kind of point in that direction. All right, so drum roll, please, of all the retailers featured. And I guess it's like, first amongst many, really, because there's so many great case studies. Which is the one that stood out the most and that was presented in the book?
Yeah, there are so many great ones to choose from, and each year, we totally, there's one that always does stand out. So, we really recognize these top innovators. But this year, the top innovation case goes to the Nike House of Innovation in New York City. I know you've been there. You've
Fifth Avenue one.
You've taken retailers on your store tours. I know this really offers customers that authentic, immersive, human connection to the Nike brand. It has the elements that are so unique in terms of the app that you can pre-order and have something sitting in their in the locker. And you can reserve items. You can they use that data to offer on-the-go access to products based on the locals that are in the area. I mean, it's really an incredible use of connecting the digital and the physical space. So I think it's really deserves its place as the top innovative case.
What's impressive to me about the store of itself, I went, I think, the first month it was open. But what they've continued to do well is reinvent this, not the physical space, but the use of the space. Like, they're not standing still. Because I popped in again this year, and literally I had to go back out. Is this the same store that used to be? Because it looked so different. They're being so innovative, not just in the core concept, but in and around reinventing the concept within the four walls.
And doing new things. And I think that's really how retailers in general are winning today.
And for each of these, in omni-integration, extreme convenience, extreme experience, and sustainability, any examples that pop out of retailers in each of those categories?
That's a great question, because again, there's so many great cases, and like you, there was some that were new to me, some that we've shared throughout the year that we've heard about, but I'm always excited when I get to see the first draft, to see some of these really cool cases. I think the one in omni-integration that stands out for me is Carvana. I have had not great experiences buying a car in a physical, traditional retail model, a store, car store kind of environment. This is really has taken that car experience and changed it. And it has allowed users to, it's an e-commerce model for used cars, offering free next day delivery of any vehicle from thousands of cars in their inventory. A customer can search for purchase, finance, trade-in, all online using a computer, laptop, tablet, and mobile friendly, which is amazing. But they also do have showrooms, so for those that still want that physical experience. And then they've taken that physical experience even further, and they have these super cool car vending machines. So, I urge you to check it out. The book obviously has a picture of this vending machine. And so if you do go into the physical store, you're literally given this giant coin to put in the vending machine to have your car come down for you. So I think it's just a really great concept. In terms of extreme convenience, the one that comes to mind for me is Bingo Box. It is out of Shanghai, and it takes that sort of Amazon Go cashierless environment that we're seeing and, again, takes it to a new level with the completely unmanned store. And so it uses technologies, QR codes, RFID chips, still using surveillance cameras and automatic payment systems. But these are, very small footprint stores. They're almost a little bit like containers. They're small boxes that are dropped into these spaces that there is, either hard to access or, it is hard to create a traditional retail physical model. And then, it takes less time for a retailer to break even in the store because there's very quick ROI. And then it's also very flexible, so they can relocate this to a space that's in need that they've identified as an opportunity.
I want to read that case study because I want to understand how they prevent just theft. How are they not just dropping, basically?
Yeah.
Anyway, I'll love to read that story. Okay, so let's talk about extreme experience.
Wow. Well, I mean, there is some great examples. I think I will talk a little bit about IKEA in the Italy in Rome, because I had an opportunity to see it last year when I was in Italy for our Ebeltoft meetings. We actually, Patrick and I, wanted to, our meetings were actually in Milan. We landed in Rome and did some food touring, as well as had the opportunity. We drove to
It's hard
Bologna.
work, but somebody's got to do it, right?
We did, and went to see Italy World. And so this IKEA is really cool. It's taken that smaller style footprint that they've been talking about. You know, they're bringing one to Toronto, and so they actually chose Italy as another opportunity for these smaller style stores. And what they've done is they actually partnered with Italy and did a pop-up shop, a mini 700 square meter store in the Italy in Rome, and this was a really great opportunity for them to showcase, get new customers, and it was an example of two great brands coming together to partner.
Complementary brands,
absolutely.
Right?
And so I think that is just really blending their services and offering for their customers. The fourth one, sustainable practices. I'm going to choose one and share one that is not a traditional retail model, but an example of a way to drive traffic, and it's called the Empty Shop out of Romania. This shop is a different kind of store because the shelves actually start empty, and customers and visitors to the shopping mall are invited to fill the store with donations. So it's really driven by the shopping center, the Promenade Mall in Romania, along with industry and the Romanian Red Cross. And so people are donating their clothes there, and then they're cleaned and then redistributed to needy families. And the Empty Shop has collected 73 tons of clothing and donated it to thousands of people across Romania. And this was a pop-up opportunity. So the campaign organizers actually stated that the Empty Shop is not just about figures, but it's also about solidarity, altruism, and humanity. So I thought it was a really great example of how this could be something to bring traffic to and help align with this particular shopping center.
I saw an echo of that at the Nordstrom women's store in New York City. So where they have the customer pickup area, they actually have some signage around drop off what you don't, that's something you've fallen out of love before. So it feels like a bit of an echo. I didn't know the process behind it. It's probably the same thing, right? It's just that, okay, here's all that stuff you've bought to pick up, but if you want to drop some stuff off, that's good too.
Yeah.
I think I saw one retail cannabis store, Planet 13, which is this massive behemoth in Vegas. I remember I went there like 5 o'clock in the morning because I was just driving around, easier to get around early in the morning. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. In Vegas. So I guess I would expect more retail cannabis, such innovative retail cannabis happening right here in Canada for 2021, which gets me to the question is each partner, each group submits some stores. What kind of stores did you submit, or how did you participate?
Yeah,
put you on the spot a little bit.
Yeah, we submitted a few. I think maybe some were a bit premature, so maybe might make the cut this year. One of the first cases we put forward was Starship. Starship falls under the extreme convenience. Starship is robots, and not people sort of robots. These are small little four-wheeler robots. We first were introduced them about 2 years ago. As you mentioned, we do a lot of work with campuses, and so they first really have made their way onto a lot of university campuses doing food delivery, and they are actually kind of replacing Uber Eats because they have this flexibility to be able to deliver food anywhere on the campus using GPS. And so users can, think about back to the university days, and you're sitting in the library or in a study hall and you're hungry, and then you're like, oh, I have to pack up all my stuff and then go across campus.
Going to lose my seat.
And maybe late at night, and you don't want to have to do that, lose my seat, And so you can actually deliver from the food vendors and have this delivered right to you. It can find you. And they're very safe. They can travel over curbs. They can travel through the snow. They can go up to 4 kilometers.
Come on.
And so, they're really super cool.
Yeah.
And we're seeing, I've had the opportunity to speak to the group, and, we've been trying to use them with a couple of programs that we're working on. And the application can be used in convenience, delivery, picking up your dry cleaning, can just be put in, and then it's in an enclosed environment. They're not super huge, but they certainly can deal with food delivery, groceries, little convenience items, and so on. So that's one to really watch for. The other that that you'll find in the book is Mountain Equipment Co-op. They, as you know, opened a store that is totally immersive here on Queen Street in Toronto.
Right.
They've done things like a big climbing wall, which seems like a natural fit. We've seen but in combination with all the other things that they've done there, product demos where customers can experience bike trainers and virtual tent life for a full-service bike and ski repair shop, and they have tablets programmed with VR tech to show a variety of in-store products, so you can try them before you purchase them. That store is a good example of greater than the sum of its parts, right? Because taken individually, climbing wall, not that innovative. Right. But I think that, the Queen Street store specifically really pulls it all together, that greater the sum of its parts, right? Yeah, absolutely. So, for folks who are no doubt excited to see the rest, because there's tons of these examples and great case studies, where can they find more? Where can they find the book, and where can they find out more about you and J.C. Williams? Absolutely. Well, I invite people to download the book. It is on our website. The ebook is in our library, and you'll find it on our homepage. You can go to www.jcwg.com, and as I said, it's a free download. Certainly, anybody can reach out to me directly. You can follow the company on all the social media channels as well as myself, and we welcome to hear people that want to nominate them. So, hey, that's an interesting idea, really, right? Keep us abreast of what we're hearing, what you're hearing, what you're seeing. If your company's wanting to, tell their story, we'd love to hear that too. Thanks for sharing, and look forward to keeping in touch. Great. Thanks for having me.
The situation in Canada is that Bill C-4, which is the implementation bill, is currently at committee stage. So about halfway through the House of Commons. It has to come out of committee, go through report stage, and then have a vote at third reading, and then it would progress to the Senate. The good news is that the Senate is doing what it calls a pre-study. And in a pre-study, the Senate essentially looks at the bill before it gets it, thereby minimizing the amount of time that it would need to take to look at the bill once it arrives.
Kind of like a parallel process.
Yeah, they do a parallel. It's a hurry-up offense, I guess. The Senate's not known for hurrying, and they defend their prerogatives to, do sober second thought. Fairly strongly. But that said, they are doing the pre-study. So, and then the next processes are just, they're not pro forma, but I mean, the royal assent and so on is done very quickly in the Senate chamber typically. So nobody knows with certainty when this will get done, but essentially the CUSMA, or, if it's the U.S., it's called the USMCA, and I think it's called like T-MEX or something like that.
And the reason for that is no nation will have an agreement or a law that starts with a foreign count's initials. That
is exactly right.
Right.
So, but not a big deal at the end of the day because the same provisions are in each. So essentially it comes into being 90 days after ratification. It's not implausible to think that ratification could take place, in March, in which case you'd have April, May, and June would be, the abeyance period before it comes into effect. So late May, early June strike us as entirely plausible outcomes for the implementation.
So is it your assessment that there's a political will to make that happen? It seems like all the parties are more or less aligned to make it happen.
Yeah, the Conservatives have made it clear that they're unlikely to defeat a bill, and even the NDP have taken a position that is more sort of constructive criticism, some observations about Labour provisions and so on, but don't appear necessarily that they're going to vote against it. The complexion of the House of Commons is currently such that the NDP do not have a big incentive to bring down the government. This is not currently flagged as what's called a confidence matter that would lead to a new election. Essentially, there's enough of a combination of parties, particularly if the Liberals and Conservatives vote for it, that it doesn't really matter what the other parties do, but it may well be a fairly broad consensus.
Yeah, and it's also the case that the Democrats in the U.S. made some changes around labor in Mexico that probably were in line with what the NDP were thinking as well, right? So, it kind of dovetails into the question for retailers who understood the agreement before it went down to ratification in the U.S. and Mexico. It's fair to say it pretty much stayed the same with some other things. Is that a fair statement?
Certainly as far as retailers are concerned. There were some changes, as said, on labor. There were some changes with respect to biologics, certain kinds of pharmaceutical products, but it didn't come back into the retail space to a discernible degree.
Well, that's a good segue into my question, and this was the question, of course, of retailers is, okay, I know there were some changes around de minimis. I know that Retail Council of Canada did a great job aligning and protecting our interests in the de minimis file, but remind me again what that means, and there's a chart I have here and in the report. But Karl, take us through the changes for de minimis and what you think they mean for retailers.
Sure. So, as listeners, viewers will know, the U.S. had pushed for a much, much higher de minimis rate, something in the order of the U.S. rate, which is $800 U.S. There's a bunch of reasons why America is happy with having a much higher de minimis rate. One is that they don't have a federal sales tax, and they don't collect state or local sales taxes at the border, so therefore it isn't a tax break in essence. It's only a duty issue on the U.S. side, whereas for us, it's also foregoing taxes as well as the duties that we are required to collect ourselves, and therefore creates a much more significant unlevel playing field. There is also a move in the U.S. to ensure the payment of state and local taxes on interstate shipments, so to some degree the principle is the same. So we didn't get everything we wanted, which was no change. But in essence, this went down to the wire. This was one of those last thorny issues. What the Canadian negotiating team ultimately agreed to was to go to $40 as a de minimis, up from the current $20. If de minimis had been indexed since it was first introduced, almost 30 years ago, it would actually have exceeded that $40 level already. It's not a perfect apples-to-apples comparison because at the time there was no GST, but nevertheless.
And we should pause here quickly just to explain the concept of de minimis. So de minimis basically is for inbound shipments. Anything under $20 would not be currently, and what was enforced, anything under $20 would not be taxed or duties because it wasn't worth the handling costs, basically, right? So that, am I getting that right? That's essentially the de minimis
that's in
issue.
essence. So there's a remission order that exempts courier, or traditionally has exempted both courier and postal shipments crossing into Canada from any taxes or duties on values under $20, and that's the value of the parcel, not of subgoods within it. And that's quite common around the world. If you look at the EU, I think the number's €22. If you look at the UK, I think it's £16. So we're sort of in the ballpark in that regard. So it's now going to rise to $40. So any parcel that has a value below $40 can enter Canada tax-free and free of duties. Although bear in mind, if it's coming in from the U.S. as a case in point, it will have paid U.S. duty on the way in if it was manufactured in, say, China. So it's not that they get away duty-free entirely. It's just, they're paying a different set of duties. Obviously, something manufactured in the U.S. or Canada or Mexico is duty-free to begin with.
Right.
So what we're really talking about is the shipment of goods from outside North America into Canada. If it's under $40, yes, they will have paid the U.S. duty. They don't have to pay the Canadian duty on top, and they don't pay sales taxes on that. The important nuance here is that this does not apply to Canada Post or to postal shipments. It only applies to courier shipments, and that's pretty important for a variety of reasons. It's tradition that courier, air freight, which is the basis of courier, is an international issue, but post is a domestic issue. And so we would have been more vulnerable, frankly, if the postal rate was to increase to 40 or had it increased to a higher level, because post is a relatively cheap method of shipment. When it comes to courier shipments, the shipping costs, frankly, would offset much of the tax and duty savings to begin with. So unlike the situation currently, where duties are exempt and taxes are exempt at 20, under the new system, and this actually mirrors the EU's approach too, there'll be no taxes if it's under $40, and there'll be no duties if it's under $150.
So now we have a two-tier system, right?
That's right. So we have a two-tier system. And so anything under $150 but over $40, there'll be duty relief but not tax relief. Anything over $150, obviously, it's treated normally. And that's, in fact, what they have done in the European Union is they have a split level. I think it's 150 euros for duty and it's 22 for tax. Bear in mind that duties are there are some products that have relatively high duties, certain kinds of apparel, footwear, and so on. But on overall, duties are typically more like 1-2% of the price of goods. Obviously, taxes, depending on the province you're in, varying anywhere from 5 to 15%.
Right.
So that's the essence of it. Is it a perfect deal? No, but I think in general, when you look at trade deals, you've got to look not only at the deal you got, but at the bullets you dodged.
Right.
And that is certainly true with respect to de minimis. There was a lot of pressure for change.
And this is not the first time we've had the de minimis file on top of your desk. It's been many, many years of through budget cycles and through all kinds of things, right?
And in some ways, it's actually more settled than now. So there have been some fairly prominent advocates of changes to de minimis, particularly the courier companies. Of course, they stand to do very, very well by having more shipments that are incentivized by having lower tax and duty costs than what is on offer in Canada. So FedEx, UPS, Amazon and eBay have both been very, very active lobbyists in this regard, completely outside of this trade negotiation, and have taken a number of runs at both conservative and liberal governments over the last decade.
And during the trade negotiation as well.
And
right?
certainly they weighed in heavily during the trade negotiation and managed to get the backing of the Canada-U.S. Chamber of Commerce, which should probably be more properly termed the Chamber of U.S. Commerce in Canada.
But we're here for you.
And a number of others, including some credit card companies that were thinking, well, maybe if it's all e-commerce, we are a greater percentage of the payments mix and so on. So we had quite an array of opponents on this file. They have shown up a number of times in the past in budget cycles. And we've had to sort of fight it back each time. Fortunately, in some respects, the way this has unfolded, now the federal government has a much, much better understanding of what the implications would be if they had a higher de minimis. And we had some fine work done for us by KPMG and others, actually, Deloitte and A.T. Kearney, that bolstered our position and showed what the negative impacts would be on Canadian investment, on Canadian employment, and, of course, on retail sales. So in some respects, we've now baked in a more advantageous position, at least as far as understanding amongst policymakers. So that's a positive outcome.
So, Karl, last question. Anything else you want? Congratulations, by the way, on the de minimis file and CUSMA overall. Any other things you want to highlight briefly that stand out in your mind for retailers? And I guess if any of you have any questions now or later, reach out to Karl as well.
Sure. There are a couple of things. One is actually quite focused, and the other one is broader even than the topic we just discussed. So there is a process for the allocation, not just under CUSMA, but also under a bunch of other multilateral treaties, allocation of supply managed goods. We are pushing to obtain a share of that for retailers. It's a tough uphill battle. Supply management is a highly
it's like dairy and other products.
We're pushing hard, but I'm not sure how much success we'll enjoy. We did get a bid under the CETA treaty with cheese. I understand that this may not be of direct interest to everybody here, but it's certainly something that is an issue for some retailers who deal in foods. I guess the other one is actually panning back. I mean, this is a trade agreement with $1.5 trillion Canadian of trilateral trade. And so. Again, coming back to the theme of the bullets that you dodged, we always said our issues in this were de minimis, but there were also the impact on the broader economy if our trade deal were to founder. If we had at the end of NAFTA, as President Trump had originally threatened, one situation might have led us to something where WTO rules would apply. That would have had about a $5 billion negative effect on Canadian retailers, largely through the imposition of some duties, but also because of some effects on the Canadian economy. We also modeled a much more alarming scenario, which was an actual trade war breaks out, and you get the kind of tit for tat.
And we certainly saw some of that.
We saw that with aluminum and steel back and forth. And our the work that A.T. Kearney did on that suggested we were looking at a $25 billion negative impact, which is obviously pretty substantial, even in a half a $500 billion retail base. So again, the outcome we didn't get was obviously much more pernicious than the one that we got. And so, in general, we're supportive of where things have landed.
Great. So thanks so much for coming on. So in summary, if all goes as expected or well by the fall, or very early fall, we should have a new trade agreement in place. And again, any retailers who have any questions now or later, reach out to Karl and his team, and be sure to answer them for
Sure. You know what? I've actually got one other topic that I thought I might touch on just for a second. So in the context of all the back and forth on de minimis, the government took a pretty long, hard look at how taxes and duties are collected. And so, the de minimis rule is the official rule, but it was found that there were significant problems with the postal rails in particular, of how packages were coming in and whether taxes and duties were being collected. That's something that existed outside of this negotiation, but is obviously a concern to retailers because the de minimis rule is only relevant to the extent that it's actually enforced. If you can ship in at $200 and no duty and no taxes collected, then obviously that's a huge advantage that you have shipping in from outside relative to a Canadian retailer. And so that process is underway. There have also been some changes with respect to postal rates charged on Chinese postal shipments, and so there are a number of other good side benefits that came from the analytical work that was done on the underpinnings of this issue in NAFTA.
Great. Well, as always, a comprehensive but succinct overview. If you put those two things together. Thanks so much for joining us. Well, thanks to Lisa and Karl for being my guests in this episode. Now let's hit the highlights of the retail news in Canada and around the world with Retail This Week for the week of March 2nd, 2020. So obviously stories about the coronavirus, COVID-19 dominated the story even in the world of retail from a whole number of different perspectives. I saw a bit of a run on the weekend. Costco is in the news with lots of people heading to Costco. It's interesting where they head to go stock up. I was at Costco, my local Costco, a couple of days ago. Everything was fine. Crowds were fine, usual. A few holes in a few spots, but the only notable thing is they were out of toilet paper. Interesting what people's priorities are. But otherwise, the store was fine. Restocked, tons of water, but just had a bit of a run on TP. So we actually didn't had, when we think of putting the Retail This Week newsletter together, the lead story is about Tepperman's, which is a proud family business from 95 years ago. This is from Furniture World, 95 years in retail. And the Tepperman family does an amazing job. Andrew Tepperman, president. 95 years ago, Nate and Rose Tepperman created a foundation that Bill and Rochelle strengthened, and now third generation. So they've done a great job. They've done some recent rebranding, and you'll find them in southern Ontario, actually. You would find Tepperman's furniture. So congratulations to them. Studies from the CSCA, the Ryerson University Top Retail 100. So every couple of years or every year they do a refresh on who are the top 100 retailers, and it really does a couple of things, highlights the concentration. I think concentration, top 10 retailers make up about 70%. Anyway, it's graphically represented. It's really good. There's an article you'll find at Canadian Retail. You find it online at Retail Council site. Notably absent from that, and they did comment in the article, is Amazon. And I guess for a variety of reasons, it's not included in the main line, but they comment on it. And they said if it was included, it'd be pretty big, because they estimate Amazon is somewhere in the range of $16 billion in Canada. That's a little higher. That's probably the highest estimate I've heard in a while. I was playing usually with a number of 12 billion, thinking $1 billion per DC. No one knows for sure. Of course, Amazon knows for sure. But in the CSCA, they call the ball at 16 billion, 1/6. Pretty impressive in any regard. Ontario received 450 cannabis store applications. This from MJ Biz Daily. So there's a bit of a deadline this week in terms of the next round of stores that are going to be given licenses to open. 300 stores are going to be given licenses to open. It looks like 450 have applied so far. If you're in the Toronto area, Retail Council of Canada is having a Retail Cannabis Forum on April 2nd. Please join us. You can learn more at retailcouncil.org. I'll be on the stage with a upfront and one-to-one interview with the leader from the OCS, the Ontario Cannabis Stores, the distributor and online retailer. But in this context, it's really about what it's like to be a distributor, and going to be asking some questions at the high level, where we try to sum up what the trends are from their perspective, because I get to see all the data from all the different perspectives, from the LP perspective and the retail perspective. Best managed company, Henry's. So last week, I interviewed Gillian Stein, CEO of Henry's, and they're in the news this week from Canadian Business as one of the best managed companies in Canada. Congratulations to them. If you want to hear why, really just listen to my interview with Gillian. It's a great interview, and she really articulates why and how they've had their business since 1909. Great Canadian success story. So tune into that, or of course check it out on Canadian Business. HBC Chairman Richard Baker replaces Helena Folks as CEO. Surprising, not me, but I thought actually almost to the month. I wasn't thinking that Helena Folks would last for one reason or another too long in that role, but looks like that came to pass from the Globe and Mail. What else? In the videos, a couple of videos. It's a couple of videos, actually. One from the Wall Street Journal, which is a great video because a reporter on the scene kind of taking film of the Chinese factories and how there's a few people there for sure, and they're gearing up to start. Still, the vast majority of workers are not there, either because they're a little bit afraid or because they're still constrained from traveling. And then some consultants from PwC talking about how companies can mitigate COVID-19 from a supply chain perspective. The options for that are thin and far between, but they do exist, and sophisticated retail experts, as we know, are very clever, and we wish them the best of luck. Retail around the world, a great article from McKinsey, Fashion Industry in 2020. This is one of those big McKinsey papers that highlights 10 themes that are crucial for the fashion industry. It's a must read, really, if you want to understand the fashion read from that very McKinsey strategic perspective. Wayfair posts eye-watering $985 million loss for the year. Wow. From Retail Dive. Joe Columb, founder of popular Trader Joe's, passed away. He passed away. He started Trader Joe's in 1967, passed away at 89 last week. So a retail giant. They now have 500 outlets in 40 states. And our very own farm boy here in Canada, in small and larger ways, is actually patterned after Trader Joe's. So congratulations for such a legacy. What a great legacy Joe leaves behind. Article on stockpiling going on in the U.S. Near coronavirus clusters. Hand sanitizer sales skyrocketed 619% nationwide in the U.S., according to marketing firm Catalina. And wow. So I think if you're listening, good luck in finding any hand sanitizer. I think rightly so much of it is being put where it needs to be right now, which is in the hospitals. If you don't have any now, washing your hands, number one tip. REI closes corporate campus, speaking of coronavirus. A deep cleaning after 2 employees may have been exposed to the coronavirus. I mean, lots of retailers travel, though that is definitely starting to shut down. And so I guess a couple of the REI closed their headquarters, sent everyone to work at home. Nike in their European headquarters in Amsterdam did the same thing, as one of their employees was diagnosed with the virus. So very prudent activities. Independent retailer Spirit Leaf, our friend Darren Bondar, who I interviewed page back, was at the late September, early October. Had a great interview with Darren. He plans to have 46 stores open. And Darren's got a franchise system, franchise model, very successful. Darren, such a great operator. So keep your eye on Spirit Leaf. That is for sure. Very savvy operator. From Vancouver, Ming Wo Cookware family closes in Chinatown. That's thinking a shout out to my our colleague and my friend Greg out in Vancouver, who triggered this one for me, and it appeared in the news in the Daily Hive. 100 years, more than 100 years in Vancouver. Legendary establishment Ming Wo Cookware closed this week. Not a decision easy to make, I suspect, and confirmed here. Kensington Market business is feeling stress and rising rents. It's tough to run everyone wants a great, funky market, and then everyone wants to live there, and then voila, the rent goes up and the taxes go up. So something to keep our eye on. Planet Organic Market, not the first time that they've been in the podcast and closing stores, but now they're done. They're wrapping up all locations, Planet Organic. And I guess, lesson learned from that is not that organic foods are not popular, but that they have been mainlined. So it's very, very difficult for specialty to keep up with the mainline grocery retailers when they all adopt at the scale organic foods. But not impossible, but very, very difficult, as Planet Organic is proven. And from my hometown of Ottawa, Mrs. Tiddly Winkles, again, she was in the podcast closing one of the stores. Now they've had to close the other one. Not great years. That's for 40 years. Not great years in the toy business, and I suspect this may not be another good year, and not for the reason of it was last year, but I'm not sure in which way and how those products are going to get made. So many of them are made in China, so there may be a bit of a delay. But anyway, it's early days. But the toy category does not need any other headwinds. So we wish everyone luck, retailer and on the vendor side for sure. Mixed brands becoming used for big retailers. This is right back to what Lisa was saying about the live, work, shop, plays. Right here, an example you've got 2,000 market condos, 290 market rental units, 290 City of Vancouver owned below market rents, all going in to this shopping mall in Vancouver. That from BIV, Business in Vancouver. What else? Coronavirus. Here's our Amazon story of the week. Coronavirus forces small-scale Amazon sellers to look for manufacturers outside China because, of course, as a marketplace vendor, you're punished by running out of stock, regardless of the reason, and the algorithms just punish you, and you get demoted, and that's very hard to get back. Demoted in the search ranking, of course, is what I'm saying. That from the Globe and Mail. And here's an interesting one. Rent the Runway assures customers cleaning clothes amid virus outbreak. So didn't even think of that. But turns out they steam the clothes between 248 to 302 degrees, which I guess is good from their perspective. They checked into it, and that's good enough to kill the viruses. So interesting, when we think about that big reuse trend, then suddenly you lay on a contagious virus. It changes the ballgame a little bit, but good for them for coming out and talking about that to their business. All right, well, that's a wrap on this episode of the Voice of Retail podcast. I am Michael LeBlanc. If you like this podcast, you can subscribe on Apple iTunes, your favorite podcast platform, including Spotify. Great news, I'm now tracking is the #1 retail industry podcast in Spotify. So thanks for all my listeners, my Spotify listeners. Please rate and review. That's very important. That will help get my rankings up in Apple. So if you could take a minute and do that, I'd be much appreciative. And be sure to recommend a friend or colleague in the retail industry. I'm Michael LeBlanc, founder and president of Emmy LeBlanc Company, Inc., and you can learn more about me on www.emmyleblanc.co or, of course, on LinkedIn. Until next time, have a great week.